I was 20 years old, running late as always. It was raining something awful that night, a real monster of a storm. I saw the bus coming, the last one of the night, and I ran for it. I remember pounding on the door, the driver opening it. With that hydraulic sigh. The next morning, I heard the news. The crash at Miller Bridge. Everyone on board. Gone. I didn't get on that bus, but I still see it in my nightmares. And I'd spent 40 years wondering what happened to the poor, tired-looking kid who was waiting at the next stop, the one who probably got on right after I ran away. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that only a late-night bus ride can give you. It's a heavy, fuzzy feeling, a surrender. You lean your head against the cold, vibrating glass, and the city dissolves into a watercolor painting of blurry lights and slick, black streets. The world outside becomes a movie you're not really watching. Inside, it's a bubble of warm, stale air and the rhythmic sigh of the hydraulic doors. Every stop is a small interruption in the dream, a brief exchange of faces before the journey continues. I was on the last bus home, the number 13, after a brutal study session. I remember seeing the familiar lights of my neighborhood approaching, telling myself, just one more stop, Leo. But the warmth of the bus, the gentle rocking, it was a lullaby. My eyelids felt like they were made of lead. I promised myself I'd just rest them for a second. Just 1 second. That's the last normal thing I remember. The soft surrender to sleep, thinking I was just another tired student on his way home. I thought I knew exactly where I was going. I woke up with a jolt, not to the familiar chime of my stop, but to a profound, bone-deep silence. The gentle rocking had ceased. The bus was stopped, but not at a bus stop. It was idling in the middle of a dark, unfamiliar road, surrounded by fog so thick it swallowed the streetlights. The air inside was freezing, and the warm yellow glow was gone, replaced by a sickly, flickering green-yellow light, like an old fluorescent bulb on its last legs. I looked around. I was the only one on the bus. The friendly driver was gone. In his place sat a tall, gaunt silhouette, a figure of pure shadow hunched over the wheel. I didn't recognize the bus itself either. The seats were cracked vinyl instead of fabric. The metal poles were tarnished, and there was a strange coppery smell in the air, like old pennies and rain. My heart started to thud against my ribs. I hadn't just missed my stop. I had woken up in the wrong place, on the wrong bus, in the middle of a nightmare I didn't know I was having. The doors hissed open, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. A woman stepped on. She was young, her hair styled in a way that seemed decades out of date. Her clothes, a simple dress and coat, were soaking wet, dripping a steady puddle of dark water onto the floor, though it wasn't raining outside. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead, wide and vacant, her skin a pale, waxy blue. She moved with a slow, heavy gait, as if the water that drenched her was weighing her down. She took a seat a few rows ahead of me, staring blankly at the back of the seat in front of her. The dripping sound was the only noise in the crushing silence. Drip, drip, drip. It was a sound that made my skin crawl. This wasn't a passenger. This was a ghost. A drowned woman who had brought her watery grave onto the bus with her. The doors hissed shut, and the bus pulled back into the fog. The rhythmic dripping now the horrifying soundtrack to my journey. I scrambled from my seat, stumbling towards the front of the bus. My mind was screaming one word. Out. I hammered on the doors, my palms slapping against the cold, foggy glass. Hey, let me off. This isn't my stop. I yelled, my voice cracking with panic. The figure in the driver's seat didn't move a muscle. The bus just kept rolling deeper into the fog. Then a voice spoke, but it didn't come from the driver. It seemed to come from the bus itself. A low, gravelly, disembodied whisper that echoed. In the small space, "Tickets, please," it rasped. "Payment is required before your final stop." I fumbled for my wallet, pulling out a handful of cash. "Here, take it. Just let me off." The shadowy head of the conductor slowly turned, a barely perceptible motion. "We do not accept currency," the voice crackled. "The toll is a memory, a happy one. Give us one, and you may rest at your stop." "That is the rule." The voice was old, tired, and absolute. It wasn't a request, it was a law. The drowned woman stood up. She walked to the front of the bus, her feet squelching in her waterlogged shoes. She stopped beside the driver's seat and stood there, silent. The conductor's shadowy form raised a single skeletal hand. He didn't touch her. A faint, silvery wisp of light, like a strand of smoke, began to drift from the woman's temple. It floated in the air for a moment, and inside the wisp I could see a flickering, ghostly image. The woman, alive and vibrant, laughing on a beach with a young man. A memory, her happiest memory. The wisp of light drifted into the conductor's outstretched hand and vanished. The woman's vacant expression seemed to grow even emptier, a profound sadness settling in her eyes. The bus slowed, and the doors hissed open onto a dark, misty pier. She stepped off without a word and vanished into the fog. The toll had been paid. I watched in horror, realizing the true price of this ride. This bus didn't just take you to a destination. It took pieces of you along the way. My hands were shaking so hard, I could barely hold my phone. I pulled it out, my thumb swiping desperately at the blank screen. No signal, of course, but the date. The date on the lock screen was wrong. It wasn't October 23rd. It was October 24th. And the year. The year was 1978. A cold, sick feeling washed over me as a forgotten local legend. A ghost story my grandfather used to tell me surfaced from the depths of my memory. The number 13 bus. The one that skidded off the old Miller Bridge on a stormy October night in '78, plunging into the ravine below. No survivors. They say, on the anniversary of the crash, the bus still runs its route, picking up the spirits of those who died that night, and any unlucky soul who happens to be waiting in the dark. I looked out the window at the endless foggy road. This wasn't just a haunting. I was a passenger on a ghost bus, on the anniversary of its final fatal journey. Panic overrode reason. I didn't care about the rules. I didn't care about the toll. I ran to the back of the bus, to the emergency exit window. My fingers scrabbled at the latch, my muscles straining to pull it open. The moment I touched it, the bus reacted. The sickly green lights flickered violently, plunging the cabin into strobing flashes of light and absolute darkness. A deafening shriek of twisting metal filled the air. The windows rattled in their frames, and the whole bus began to shake violently, as if it were being torn apart. The conductor's voice boomed through the chaos, no longer a whisper, but a furious, guttural roar. There are nitrogen monoxide shortcuts to the last stop. I was thrown to the floor, my head striking a metal pole. The shaking stopped. The lights steadied. I lay there, dazed and bleeding, the coppery scent of my own blood now mixing with the smell of decay. The message was clear. There was no escape. The bus and the entity that drove it would not be denied its passengers. At the next stop, another figure materialized from the fog. As she stepped on, my breath caught in my chest. It was impossible. It couldn't be. It was Sarah, my childhood friend. She had died in a car crash on her way home from a party 5. Years ago. She looked exactly as I remembered her, but pale, her eyes holding a deep, sad wisdom. She saw me, and for the first time, one of the ghosts reacted. A flicker of recognition, of sorrow. crossed her face. She sat down opposite me. Leo, her voice was a faint whisper, like the rustle of autumn leaves. You fell asleep. You weren't supposed to be on this ride. I started to cry, the horror of the night finally breaking me. Where are we going, Sarah? I asked, my voice choked. She looked towards the front of the bus, towards the endless fog. Home, she whispered. We're going to the place we all last remember. We're going to the bridge. The bus finally slowed, the groan of its old brakes echoing in the fog. The doors hissed open. Outside was not a street, but the mangled, rusted wreck of a 1970s bus lying at the bottom of a deep, misty ravine. The old Miller Bridge loomed. Above us, a skeleton in the fog. This was it, the crash site, the last stop. One by one, the other ghostly passengers stood up and walked off the bus. As each one stepped out, they seemed to dissolve into the mist, their forms fading as they reached their final resting place. Soon, it was just me, Sarah, and the conductor. Sarah gave me a sad, faint smile. This is my stop, Leo, she whispered. She walked to the door and turned back one last time. Don't forget me. Then she too stepped out and was gone. The doors began to close. I was alone with the thing in the driver's seat. The whisper filled the bus one last time. The toll is due. The conductor's shadowy form turned to me. Its skeletal hand was outstretched. I knew what I had to do. I closed my eyes and focused, not just on any happy memory, on my favorite memory of Sarah, the two of us as kids sitting on a swing, set in summer, laughing so hard we couldn't breathe, the sun warm on our faces. I held on to that perfect, beautiful moment. And then I let it go. I felt a sharp, cold pull, like a thread being plucked from the center of my mind. The silvery wisp floated from my head, carrying with it the sound of our childhood laughter, and was absorbed by the shadow. The doors hissed open. I stumbled out, not into a ravine, but onto the curb of my own street, the first rays of dawn painting the sky. The bus was gone. I was safe. I ran home, my heart full of a desperate, thankful joy. It wasn't until later that day, when I tried to remember Sarah's face, that I realized the price I'd paid. I could remember her name. I knew she was my friend, but the memory of her smile, the sound of her laugh, it was gone. A perfect empty space where my happiest memory used to be. The bus had taken its toll.